Hello, this is the assessment for restoration of a Steinway Model B grand piano made in 1926 at 210 centimetres long. Unfortunately, it's been stored badly for a long period of time. It's obviously got very damp, and you can see here the key tops have come off. That happens when this expands, the key expands, and the ivory doesn't, and then the key top will come off. Or it could be the opposite if it was in a dry place. So the ivories have come off. They are all there, but we would normally replace them. It's just that it's quite difficult to get this to match well at the join. We can certainly do it. But nowadays, because ivory is difficult to export and it requires a certificate anyway to sell ivory, we tend to replace them. Now, before looking at the mechanics of the piano, the casework isn't in perfect condition, as you can see here. Could do with repolishing, and very frequently oak pianos are difficult to sell, so just for the sake of the value of the piano, it's frequently redone in black, and that would be the sensible thing to do economically. Though if you couldn't afford that, then this could be obviously trying to make it good, try to make the case as good as we possibly can. But as I say, oak is a difficult colour, and that's some spiders where it's been stored, I think, in a barn. I think that's right, I haven't verified that, and for a long period of time, as we'll see, it's got very rusty. So damage on the casework, that's impossible to repair without repolishing the whole piano. So obviously the right thing to do, if you're restoring the whole piano, then doing this, restoring this, would be a sensible thing to do. And some more scratching around the other side too. Now, the top of the fall isn't too bad. Oak is often used as school pianos. I always thought because they don't need veneering so much, you can have solid oak, but there is actually veneer on this piano. So if you're familiar with how much veneer there would be on this piano, as I say, solid oak. Oak is very often solid, but there's veneer on this one. Now, the top lid was off the piano when it was picked up. There were no screws here, so our removal teams left the lid off the piano. I put it on just for you to be able to see. I put it on the top, but obviously didn't screw it on. And there's the piano serial number. In actual fact, there's a 2 at the front there. That dates it at 1926, and it's a Model B, so it's like one of Steinway's very best pianos. But you can see here that unfortunately it's got very damp, and it has got extremely rusted. There is a chance that if you lubricated here, and if you took the strings back down and back up again, then you could raise the pitch up. It's at 426 or so at the moment, so it's more than half a semitone flat. So there is a chance of that, but obviously it's a candidate for full restoration and certainly restringing. I don't think we'd want to attempt that. I'm only mentioning it if you're in a far and away place and need to work on a piano and you see rusty strings. If you lubricate here, take them down and back up, then they very often won't break, even though they look incredibly rusty. So anyway, we'd restring this piano definitely. We wouldn't want to attempt that. So the soundboard, well, it shows signs of probably expansion and contraction, so when we'll see if we need to shim it, and no doubt there will be some need to shim the soundboard when the strings are off. And the down bearing seems to be quite good. The tone is good, but when it's actually being worked on, we'll have to re-examine that. If there's not enough down bearing, that's pushing down on this area here, particularly in the mid treble, then the tone is weak. I think it's reasonable though. Listening to the tone, the dampers, well, there's so much to do. I haven't actually, on our assessment sheet, haven't bothered to look at items individually, because it's quite clear that everything needs full restoration. Now you can see evidence of cracking underneath the soundboard. That doesn't affect the tone at all, hardly, because the ribs carrying the tone across the soundboard in that direction, but we would do that if we were going to really restore the piano. While the piano's been in storage, this front rail has warped as well, as you can see, so it doesn't fit properly. As well as being warped, it's also obviously broken off here as well. It's quite common for that to happen to Steinway's front rails, and someone's tried repairing it here. There's the other side, so that's in perfect condition. That's what they should be like. They're a bit of one. They do tend to break. It's very common as they're taken off and put on so often. Actually, both screws are missing. There's a screw here that this slots into, and it's held on by the posts here, the metal posts. Looking at these key felts, it's obviously been worked on extensively at some stage before it went into storage, presumably. Now looking at the rest of the action, these screws are exceptionally rusty, so a long period of time it's been in storage, I think. The hammers, they've been refaced at some stage. They could be replaced. They are, I think, original Steinway hammers. There we see the name Steinway on the second to the end hammer. These rollers are not particularly worn, so they may have been, they are a bit worn, but not as worn as you'd have thought with the amount of refacing done on the hammer, so maybe they were replaced at the time. See, those hammers should be perhaps another 3mm thick, and that's that's the main melody area there where they count the most, obviously, and you want to look at the top hammers to see how much there's left on there. There's plenty of felt left on there, so you could keep these hammers, could replace them. Ideally, we'd like to replace the hammers and then start again and get the best tone possible. Ideally, we'd like to change hammers, shanks and rollers, as we've mentioned before, because the hinges are also slightly tight, some of them, and if we look at them here, if I let them go down, they're not as bad as I'd have expected for it being stored in a damp place for a long time. As you look at the hinge, you think there's going to be very tight hinges because these are all rusty, so that's a little bit surprising, but it does need fully restoring. Certainly there are some options not to change the hammers, but we would ideally like to replace hammers, shanks and rollers to get the best tone. To get an idea of whether the bridges need recapping, you play the notes in the mid treble here, and they're quite full sounding, so I don't think that needs doing. A bit weak at the top. New hammers would help, but I think we could probably voice those and get them sounding a lot better. And down the bass, that's fruity. I think with new strings that'll sound almost as good as new. So looking at the worksheet, I haven't filled in lots of the categories here because really it needs fully restoring, so they'll all have to be re-regulated and checked and so on. So the key dips are a little bit, perhaps a bit low, 10mm, but that'll all be redone anyway. I don't think there's any doubt about this. We certainly wouldn't want to try and attempt anything except a full restoration. Casework, well, doing it modern black would be the normal thing to do. You could obviously have a different colour if you preferred. That would be normal, because that makes it a more valuable piano if you ever want to resell. Key weighting, really, that's irrelevant as well, because we're going to redo. If we don't change the hammers, obviously we're going to even that up. But you can see I haven't filled in most of those categories. Now the ivory unglued, I would prefer to replace everything, though all the ivories are there. So that's obviously a choice to make. Again, value-wise, I think it would be better if you replace them. So the assessment of a Steinway Model B 1926, an excellent instrument, but very clearly needs full restoration. It's not the first time that we've had to assess a piano that's been stored badly, shall we say. Not quite sure the exact circumstances of the storing. I'll try and find out. The dampers aren't working properly. There's not that much point in me playing it, but except to show that the underlying tone is there, a nice fruity bass and solid treble. The hammers obviously make a difference, and the strings will also make a lot of difference when we change those. Surprisingly in tune for a piano that's been stored like that, but that's because it's a high quality piano. I'm quite surprised I can get anything like a normal sound. The bass is a bit out of tune, as you can hear. Beautiful throaty bottom A there, so we look forward to restoring this piano. Very weak up there. It's hard to get these top notes strong anyway, and you might find if you've got a piano that they are a bit weak anyway. After all, they only went up to 85 keys originally, and then these extra 3, and then somebody decided that 88 was a good idea, and they're only good in the octave really. So I hope that's helpful. If you're storing a piano, make sure that the environment is good. That's an obvious one, but we were delighted to restore this. And if you have a piano that you'd like restored, please do write to us, info@robertspianos.com. Thank you very much for listening.